Hey guys, Meteorologist Chris Tomer here on this Sunday. Welcome to the 2nd of November and the time change. Let's go up to Arapahoe Basin in Colorado. I mean, it is a totally clear morning. It's beautiful out there. You can see back towards Breckenridge there. But here's the thing: it is going to be a dry stretch, a dry lull with high pressure, dry air in place over Colorado, Utah, Wyoming, parts of Idaho. Certainly that's going to be the case in New Mexico, Arizona, dry for California until we finally get a storm system that moves in around the 5th in California, West Coast, and then a piece of that will break off and move into the interior. I don't have a whole lot of snow for Colorado early on. I'll show you that in the forecast coming up. But here's radar across the west. There's a little bit of precip out there. A lot of it's still being directed up here into the Pacific Northwest and BC, Alberta. There's a teeny tiny bit here. I mean, a little bit. Montana, parts of Idaho. That's just a little wave out ahead of the main storm system. Let me show you what this actually looks like on the satellite. This is water vapor satellite imagery here, and this really tells a story. So all the dry air is in the blacks, the oranges, and the reds. This is all dry air across a lot of the west right now. Very dry, but you can see the next surge of moisture right here. That's coming in with a strong jet stream, and again targeting the Pacific Northwest and BC with that little package. Now that may also affect parts of northern Idaho and northwest Montana, so the northern tier, but for right now it is high and dry across a lot of the Intermountain West. All right, my bullet points. Here's what I've got. So storm track, we talked about that, favoring the Pacific Northwest, the dry lull through about 11.4, 11.5, and then it will affect California with the next storm system coming in. Overall, 2 to 3 atmospheric river surges here for the Pacific Northwest, BC. The next one, 11.4, there's probably a couple, maybe 1 to 2 embedded with an 11.4, 5, 6, 7, and then another one, 11.9 through 11.10. Looking at the best odds of snow, I won't go through all these dates, but man, there's a lot of dates. I went out pretty far today, all the way into like mid-November. Colorado, Tahoe, Utah, Idaho, Wyoming, Montana, and interior BC. So for example, in Utah, your next best chance of snow across the Wasatch, the high Uintas, late 11.5, 6, and 7, 11.10, 11.11, and then 11.12, 13, 14, and 15. So that's how you would read that particular chart. Now, drilling down on that, just a few select locations. Now, as we get into ski season and we bring that snow level all the way down to the valley floors so that we have a uniform snow coverage for all the ski areas, instead of doing something like this, I'll just have it on a map. We'll use maps with specific amounts, but for now, Alta, you can see an inch on the 6th, an inch on the 7th, 3 to 6, coming 11, 10, 11, 11, 6 to 12, 11, 12, 13, and 14. So that's how you would read it. And there's really not a lot for Colorado. 1/10 of an inch to maybe 1/2 an inch on the 6th for snow mass. A little bit more there, 11, 11, 11, 12, and then quite a bit more if this pattern holds for late in the period, 11, 13, 14, and 15. And you can see the numbers for Jackson Hole, Payette National Forest in Idaho, central Idaho. There's Baker, Fitzsimmons Range up there in BC, which is really part of that coastal range. Mount Begbie in BC. Got a pretty good snow coming on 11, 15, 16, and 11.5 through 11.7. Excuse me, that's 11.5, 6, 7. And then another 8 to 12, 11.10, 11.11. Got Mount Hood there and Mount Washington. A little bit for Mount Washington. We'll take a look at the graphical snow forecast for that coming up. Here's the forecast radar. So we'll start this up about lunchtime today, Sunday, November 7th. Got just a little bit, and I showed you that on radar, just a little bit of snow across Wyoming. I mean, it's very, very light, but high and dry, Utah, Colorado, Four Corners, Arizona, dry there in California and Nevada. All right, so let's move this ahead in time. All right, here we are at about the lunchtime, or not lunchtime, but dinner time. Let's move into early Monday. So there's probably 5, 6 o'clock in the morning on Monday. There's the lunch hour roughly on Monday. Now, look at this new flow. I showed you this on that satellite, that water vapor satellite. That's the new package of moisture coming in, being directed into Oregon, Washington, the Pacific Northwest, and parts of the northern tier northern Idaho, and northwest Montana. All right, moving ahead. There's the dinner hour on Monday. All right, here's early on Tuesday. So this is probably 5 a.m. on Tuesday. And still looking at the same axis of moisture. Most of this is along that axis in north. Everybody else to the south of that is still high and dry. All right, there's the lunch hour on Tuesday. There's your dinner hour on Tuesday. I mean, look at all that heavy precip up in the Pacific Northwest, BC. All right, let's move into, so this is early. This is probably midnight into early Wednesday. And again, we start to see, though, the influence from the next storm system right here. See how it's digging into California? It's moving to the south a little bit. That's the next storm system. And that's how we're going to get some snow for the High Sierra between probably the 5th and the 6th, somewhere in there. But look at all this heavy precip up here into Oregon, Washington, BC. I mean, you're looking at some yellows embedded there, so a little heavier precip there on the scale. So that's your forecast radar. Let's look at the atmospheric pressure anomalies. This is today, Sunday, 11/2. So that, for example, that's an area of low pressure or lower than normal pressures. This is in the middle of the atmosphere, so up at about 18,000. And there's that big area of high pressure. Higher than normal pressures across the west. Your storm track is way up here, favoring just a lot of the Pacific Northwest, BC, Alberta, and beyond. All right, moving ahead. This is Thursday, 11/6. Now, by this point, California and the Sierra would be getting some precip, some snow at the higher elevations. So, I mean, overall, you can kind of see it. This is the Jetstream forecast right there. There are your lower pressures. So whatever's here is kind of riding in this direction. So with this type of setup, you would have snow across Idaho, Montana, Wyoming, maybe brushing northern Utah and northern Colorado. Snow in Washington, Oregon, BC. All right, let's do a comparison for, this is Friday, 11/7. I've been doing this for the last several days. Pretty big difference here. So the operational model right there has quite a bit of action here across northern Utah, northern Colorado, Idaho, Montana, Wyoming, the Pacific Northwest, with lower than normal pressures. Now that is not the case on the AI model. The AI model kind of separates the two areas of lower pressures with a little bit of a ridge and high pressure. That's a pretty big difference. And so with the AI, you're not looking at any snow for Utah, Colorado. Wyoming would be much quieter. It'd be quieter in Idaho. It'd be quieter in Montana. So that's a pretty significant difference. Now, I want to show you this. This is way down the road. But this is Wednesday, 11/12. So this is 10 days out. If this verifies, look at this. This would be a powerful jet stream there and significantly lower than normal pressures there, with probably one or two lows. This would represent much cooler air, colder air, and higher chances for snow. This would be an active pattern for a lot of the West, if that verifies. All right, this is the forecast for the Pacific Northwest. Integrated vapor transport, trying to spot the atmospheric rivers. There's a little bit of a kink there, a little bit of an increase, 3-4, but two surges right here, moderate to low level strong, between late 4 and late 7. And then another little uptick right here between 9 and 10. So what would happen is these storm systems would come in juiced up and then throw some of that moisture into the interior Rockies, if that verifies. All right, looking at the forecast for total precipitation, let me wait till this starts back up at the beginning, but this is as if everything fell as rain. So again, your axis early on through about the 4th or 5th is all north of that line. And then after that, the storm system sort of breaks that pattern. And then we start to see it dig into the Sierra and parts of California. And then that throws moisture into Utah, Colorado, and beyond. So that's a lot of precip where you see these whites and these magentas through the Cascades and the high volcanoes. That's 5, 6, 7 inches of liquid, which would correspond to feet of snow accumulation. All right, here's a 10-1 as if everything fell as snow. And notice, this goes out about 10 days. So early on, it's pretty far to the north, and then we start to see, you can see the snow right there over the Sierra on the 5th or 6th. Higher elevation, of course. And then towards the end of that, right there, we start to see some snow through Utah and Colorado, but it definitely takes some time. There's quite a bit of accumulation indicated for the Tetons, and a lot of Idaho and Montana as we get later into the period, and we can get some colder air in here. Okay, let's look at the Northeast. So it comes in little waves, one there, another one right there, and another one towards the end of the period. So there's 3 or 4 different little waves of accumulation. Nothing significantly heavy here, but I showed you that forecast from Mount Washington. You kind of get 1 to 2 to 3 at a time, inches of snow accumulation at a time, and so you may end up with, maybe 6 to 10 by the very end of this over some of the very highest peaks if you're lucky, but it's very light. All right, let's break that down. So here's Mount Washington. So this is your snow plume from Mount Washington, and by the middle of November, this ensemble accumulates about 8.5 inches of accumulation there. Some of the air bars are up around a foot. So like I was saying, maybe 6 to 12, 6 to 10, if you're lucky up there. But again, it doesn't all come at one time. There's a little bit up front, and then it kind of accumulates in little waves as you go through. Looking at Jay Peak, Vermont, less than Mount Washington. This is extreme northern Vermont here. So this is about 5-6 inches by November 16th. So not a lot of accumulation, but definitely starting to shift gears. Let's go out west. Here's Jackson, Wyoming. So looking pretty good here. And like I said, we start to see the pattern favor a lot of Wyoming as we get later into the period. Look at these. Look at the acceleration up here to over a foot by the middle of November. And that's down in Jackson. But look at this big lull. This is really dry right here, all the way through potentially the 5th. That's really dry. And that's the case for Colorado as well. If I take you into Berthoud Pass, very dry period right here through probably the 5th or the 6th. And then the numbers start to go up a little bit. I mean, this is really kind of sad to see this. Only 3.5 inches. That's pretty bad for Colorado. It's not great, that's for sure. All right, guys, that's going to do it for this mountain weather update on this Sunday. I hope everybody has a wonderful day, and thank you for tuning in here.